Hey guys, just waiting on a few more people to join here, then we can get started. Hey Sky, how's it going?
Hi, Ziad. I'm good. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Dweez is joining here too, and then we can kind of get started. Hey Dweez, you here? There
Yes,
he
I
is.
am. How are you?
Doing pretty well. How's your day been? You're on mute, Dweez.
Yeah, it's been pretty productive, I must say. Did a lot today. It's in the evening for me, by the way, so yeah, that's why I did a lot today, 'cause you know.
Yeah, I'm just saying I'm getting started. I mean, it's like 10 a.m. over here. Yeah. All right, well, for everyone joining today, we're going to be talking about just a little bit of a casual conversation about how each of us kind of got involved in tech, some of the challenges we faced, and just overall, like how we kind of got started and how we got to where we are today. So, as usual, if you guys have any questions for us, tech related, or just any questions for us and our journeys, feel free to drop them in the comments, and we'll definitely get to them. So we can kind of get started. The first kind of question here will be like sort of an intro one, and I'll throw it to you, Deweese, first. And it's kind of the story kind of question. So can you tell us about like, a moment maybe in the past or an event or something that you went through that really kind of motivated you or inspired you to get into tech?
Yeah, well, I first started the first time I ever like coded was it was in 2020, 2021, and I was basically doing data analysis. It was for my thesis. My thesis supervisor was like, "Yeah, you gotta pick a programming language. You can do Python or R." I picked R because I heard so many horror story about, oh, how hard Python is and crazy stuff. So I went with R. That's like the worst mistake I ever made. I just camped Stack Overflow throughout the whole thing. Like I just my code was like the messiest code that you have ever seen. It's like I can write a horror story about it. But yeah, I started with R. Then after I was done with that, it was just data analysis. I just made graphs basically, and yeah, I just went like a whole year after that. I was like, yeah, I wanna start coding seriously. Like it's useful, if you know how to do these things. So yeah, that's when I would say I really started coding seriously. We were learning smart system modeling. It's like we talk about IoT and things like that a lot. Smart systems modeling is like you have a whole grid of a smart system in like urban areas and cities. And the core of it was programming, so I wanted to learn to get more serious. I wanted to actually know how to code. And yeah, that's how I ended up getting into tech. That's like the first time, let's say, like that was the moment that I would say, yeah, I really started, learning how to develop software.
Nice, nice. That's awesome, man. I mean, that falls kind of similarly to my story, to be honest. But yeah, now we got Delia in here, Tech Unicorn. Can you hear us okay? It's good to have you. And for everyone else
Yeah.
who's just joining, we're doing a little bit of like each person's kind of sharing their story, how they got into tech, some of the challenges they faced, and stuff like that. So if you have any questions, feel free to definitely drop it in the chat. So Delia, with you just joining, you want to kind of share, the question was like, what's the first event or experience that kind of like inspired or motivated you to get into tech? Like, where did it kind of start for you?
Well, for me, it was kind of a random decision.
I didn't know what I wanted to do when I was choosing what to do for university, and I found all these double degrees. And
Mm.
originally, I was going to do a double degree with business and math, but I heard you have to eat, breathe, sleep math, and I love math, but maybe not that much. And then I found one with business and computer science, and I was like, well, I heard computer science makes a lot of money. I guess I'll just randomly do that one. And I had never coded before that in my life. So that's kind of how it happened. I just chose an entire degree kind of randomly, and it worked out. I actually ended up liking my computer science degree a lot more than my business degree. All the business classes were so boring. So after my first business internship, I was like, nope, and I did the rest of them in like software engineering internships. And yeah, and from there I really liked coding, and that's how it happened.
That makes sense. So kind of randomly, but thank God it happened, right? That's good. Uh,
Exactly.
yeah. Sky, what about you? I know you're in college right now, so you want to kind of tell us about why you chose computer science or what happened that inspired you to pursue that?
Sure, yeah. So I was working full time in healthcare. I was working at like clinics, and then I worked in medical records. And when I worked in medical records, I was working from home, and it was during the panoramic, and I just saw that like a lot of the work that I was doing could have been automated, and I didn't know anything about computers. I didn't know like how to code or anything, but I just saw that like I felt like my job was a little bit like replaceable. And there were, while I was thinking that, there were other departments that were completely getting replaced, and they tried to rehome a lot of the employees, but that's just what was happening because of like automation systems and phone systems and computer stuff. Because everything we're doing is just pointing and clicking, basic like paper pushing, but in documents and softwares. Um, so oh, my husband wanted to go back to university for mathematics, and I just did not want to. I couldn't imagine like him going to school and like learning at class all day and me like staying at home working full time. I was like, no, I'm not. I can't do that. Like I knew I wouldn't last because I just didn't like working from home anyway. So he knew that I like computers and I really liked like problem solving, and I always kind of thought I was like a right brain kind of person, like creative. Um, but I just tried out coding, and then think I was just doing like HTML and CSS, and I was like, okay, that's it. I'll just become a software engineer now because HTML is cool. So that's kind of like what sparked me to look into tech.
That makes sense. You guys have pretty cool stories. I mean, mine was a lot more boring, I would say. I think at like an early age, my parents both worked in tech, so they kind of like just slowly pushed me into the industry and were telling me how cool coding is and how much impact you can have. And eventually they convinced me. So I studied it in college and went on from there. So I was like rebellious at first, but I lost that battle, unfortunately. So
That's good
I
you
ended up
had
studying
role
computer
models, though.
science. Yeah, I ended up studying computer science and working from there. So yeah, we have a couple questions that kind of popped up in the chat related to this kind of talk. So the first one, and this is honestly one that I see a lot anyways, just on Instagram or comments or like things like that, and it's that is the learning at the age of 30 or like learning how to code just at an older age too late? And is it too late to get a job at that point once you've kind of learned to code? So, what do you guys think? Delia, why don't we start with you?
I think it's never too late. I mean, I've met so many incredible coders that started after the age of 30. I personally can't speak to that because I'm not 30 yet, so I'm just gonna go off of people I've met. I've met so many people that like are really good, and you don't have to start when you're 12. Like I think that's such a stereotype in tech, like the 13-year-old hacker that's what you imagine as a software engineer. I even like I think I saw an article that an 80-year-old woman taught herself how to code. Like there's age is just a number, there's no limit to when you can learn. And one of my friends that I interviewed actually for my YouTube channel was just telling me about how she dropped out of high school and had like a gap of 6 years or more where, she didn't really do anything related to tech at all. And then she became a data scientist at Google. And, these kinds of stories are possible now because you can teach yourself anything online. You don't even need a degree. So I think 30 is definitely not too late, and no age is really too late.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've seen a lot of those too. Like my manager used to be like a nuclear engineer, and he like did that for like a decade or something, and then ended up switching to software. So you can even be doing something just completely like different and in another field, and learn how to code. So yeah, I totally agree. It's never too late at all. Dweez, do you agree, or you have another something else to add?
Um, no, I have heard about this lady as well. Delia was talking about. I've seen also a story from an older gentleman. He was like 70 something, I believe, and he just went for it. So no, it's never too late. And the other day I also saw like this video, and this person was basically saying that they were mentioning people that accomplished great things. Like this woman, she started designing at 40 and she went on to be like one of the top designers in the world. So I don't think it's necessarily related to age. Like, yeah, sure, it's great when you start early. Like, you'll probably have an edge to people your age. Like, there's like a 20-year-old prodigy that has been hacking since they were 13, as Delia said. But I don't think that's a necessity. Like, you don't have to be a prodigy to break into tech. We only have a handful of prodigies, you know? Like here, for example, Ziad is the only prodigy among us. Or, yeah, maybe Delia is a prodigy as well. Sky started later, and I am definitely not a prodigy. So, no, I don't think it's a necessity. It's like a bunch of things people tell themselves, like, I'm too old for this. I can't do it. I'm too old to learn. You can learn anything at any time you want. Yes, it may be easier. Like, I'm pretty sure a 5-year-old will, grasp some things faster than you would at the age of 30. But I wouldn't say it's a necessity to get in tech at all.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm a prodigy at all. I think that realistically, like anyone who really wants to pursue like a tech career, it's just a matter of like time, like effort over time will definitely get you to where you want to be there. But I think that's a good segue into our next question. And Sky, I know I'll start with you this time. And are there any like challenges or obstacles that you've kind of faced while getting into tech, while learning how to code or breaking into the industry? And if you have like any examples or realistic things that people should expect basically when they're wanting to get into tech.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think honestly everything is a challenge in this field, like especially when you're just starting out. I would say if you're starting like from the beginning, because I don't want to get to like, interviews and stuff if you're just thinking about getting into tech, but if you're at the very beginning, I would say one of the challenges or adversity that you might face is just thinking that you're not smart enough to be able to learn all the new things that you're going to have to learn. But depending on like how you approach it, like for me, I am in university, so I started with like different classes. And a lot of it was, yeah, it was like way out of my scope. Like even picking up my textbooks for my first semester of class, I was like freaking out because I'm like, I don't know what any of this is. But what I learned is that when you are starting out and you don't know what something is, like that's where you're supposed to be. You're not supposed to enter a class or enter a program or a boot camp knowing everything, even though it feels like you should know everything. It's like you're there and you can know that like by the end of it, you will know all of that. And I think that's like a big motivator to get through your classes. That's what motivates me. I'll like skim through like a really tough textbook and just know like, okay, in 3 months, I'm actually going to go back through this book and know what's going on. But you're not going to know it at the very beginning, and that's fine. It's just like a new job, like getting into starting a new job, like obviously you don't know anything, but you're gonna learn everything. And then after a month or two, you're like, a pro. I mean, it takes longer than that for this field, but yeah, kind of similar,
Yeah.
similar.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I totally agree. Building off of that, like I think that like having like imposter syndrome is definitely a pretty big challenge, especially like when you said you go into a class and you feel like you should know everything. A big part of that is like you will see other people around you that know what they're doing a little bit more than you. Like no matter how good you are, that's just like always going to be the case. So you have to really remind yourself that like everybody started at different times and it's okay because like realistically everyone I really do believe everyone can get into tech regardless of like what their kind of certain background is or their skill level is like at the start. So like trying to overcome that imposter syndrome is definitely a big challenge and understanding that it's like really going to continue with you from school all the way to when you're like even high level like in within a company. So yeah, I'm really curious about what are your other challenges as well? Like, Dweez, do you have anything you want to share? Challenges or obstacles when breaking into tech?
Yeah, I think it's a matter of sticking to it. I think in the beginning, especially, you have no clue what you're doing and you're just learning syntax and like you're following the tutorial or whatever you're doing. And you're writing code and after you're done, you just don't remember anything. So that I think discourages a lot of people. But as Guy said, after a few months, you start to realize that, yeah, I'm getting better at this and I'm able to do things now that I wasn't able to do before. And I think that's also so fascinating about learning, like especially like in this technological field, that after a while, you just turn on the computer and you create something from scratch. I think that's the beauty in it, and I think a lot of people give up too early. Like even 3 months in, it's not a lot. Like maybe after a year or something, and you're it's like you're a year ahead and you're still not progressing, then yeah, then maybe it's not for you. But I'm pretty sure after 1 year, if you compare yourself to how you were before, you would look at yourself and say, "Damn, I'm a genius," like I'm a prodigy. Like there's no other way around it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that that makes sense. I'm curious because Delia, I know you've worked at a couple big companies and you've probably like seen and felt this firsthand. Somebody just generally asked like, how do you deal with imposter syndrome and how do you kind of, I don't know if get over it is the right word, but like, how do you just kind of like overcome it, I guess, to a degree.
Honestly, I think you overcome it with experience. Like, once you have enough experience, you gain that self-confidence, and you're still gonna have a mild version of imposter syndrome. I don't think it ever goes away because, you're never gonna know everything. But the more confident you become, the easier it becomes to deal with it.
Hmm.
So, yeah, I have worked at big companies. Like at Google, every single person has imposter syndrome, and they're all like incredible, super smart wizards, and somehow they have imposter syndrome. So obviously, like I had imposter syndrome there, but like I actually like did not belong there. So I was thinking to myself, like, wait, does everybody really feel like this? Because then that means that this is all just like we're all kind of crazy for thinking that. Like we just got to all do the best that we can with the knowledge we have. And even senior devs, they're not all going to know all the things you know as a junior dev. Like, you always have your own unique information and contribution and things like that. So I think the best way to deal with it is like getting enough experience and so that you gain that confidence, and also like changing your mindset and your perspective so that you like understand what you bring to the table. Like I've helped some people that are way smarter than me on things that I found trivial. You know what I mean? Like
Hmm.
some people didn't know how to use GitHub. I'm like, "Wait, what?" And you can bring your own strengths to the table, and then that's where you feel like, "Okay, like we're all kind of in this together. We don't have to compare ourselves and all that jazz." But yeah, to answer the question before that, one of the biggest challenges was definitely imposter syndrome. And Louise, like, I don't know, it, I disagree with the 1 year thing because I didn't know what I was doing for like 2 or 3 years. And then it still worked out for me. Like, I swear, probably third year is when I was like, oh, everything clicked. And I was like, oh, I finally understand data structures and algorithms and like all the actually important stuff. Before that, I was kind of just so confused by everything. And yeah, some people take longer than others to learn. So that's also a big thing to keep in mind. You can't compare your chapter 1 to someone's chapter 50. So, like learn at your own pace and be kind to yourself. And as long as you keep progressing, I mean, you don't give up, you're going to keep progressing and you're going to be okay.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. Like it took you 2 to 3 years, like that's longer than my 1 year. So that there you go. People, if it takes you that long, don't quit. Stick to it. So what
Well,
made
I mean,
you
until
like,
I felt
yeah.
like comfortable, until I
Hmm.
was finally like, oh, this all makes sense now, you know?
Yeah.
Like I was
But
still
what made you like
struggling a
stick
lot.
to it? That
Well,
was
I
my
had to because
question.
it
What?
was a degree.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Like when
Sure,
you
yeah.
already pay for the degree and you're 2 or 3 years in, you're like, well, I have to keep, like, I'm not gonna, it's a sunk cost fallacy, but
Hmm.
still, I felt like I'd disappoint my parents, so I kind of had to do it. But if I didn't, if
Yeah.
I wasn't doing a degree, I probably would have quit within a year. So I can't even imagine how hard it is for people that are self-taught or even boot camp grads. Like it's a lot harder because you have to learn everything in such a shortened amount of time, and you can't. Like you have to be nicer to yourself and be like, it's okay, I can learn on the job, I can learn outside, you know.
Yeah.
But maybe I'm just slow.
Yeah. Sky, you're in college right now. Is that kind of, is she echoing how you're feeling, or what are your thoughts on that?
Oh yeah, for sure. So I was doing community college classes for like years, like
Mm.
5 years, and then I finally almost had enough for like an associate's because I was doing part-time. But my main focus was like nursing, so I thought I was gonna get a degree in nursing. And then as soon as I decided to go to university for computer science, I was starting from scratch, but I had like those first 2 years done. So I was just jumping into like, I have from that semester, like almost, I think more than a year ago to December 2024 is literally just all computer science and math classes. So yeah, I feel like I'm constantly just like gasping for air because other people have like, they'll have one CS class and then they'll have like two humanities and an English and whatever like that. And I'm like, I'm just in all engineering classes all the time. So I'm like,
Yeah.
it's overwhelming. I know in medical school, they say it feels like you're trying to drink from a fire hose. Because all the information like coming at you and you're just trying to like catch whatever you can that you think is going to be helpful. So that's kind of what it feels like.
Yeah, yeah, I can definitely echo that feeling because I remember I took like all the tough like CS classes together in college, like the operating systems and the hardware classes, and those were definitely tough. Someone also asked what concepts took you the longest to learn, and how did you kind of deal with it? So Sky, in college right now, what's kind of one of the hardest topics or concepts that you had to go through?
Oh, well, the weird part about getting a computer science degree at university is there's a lot of classes that you take that are engineering, but don't really have anything to do with programming.
Mm.
So, I mean, of the classes I've taken so far, discrete math was like ridiculously hard. Like I failed last semester and then I took it again this semester. I think I got like a B plus or A minus or something. But it was just like the concepts of that were so ridiculous. But I think it helps, in the end with my problem solving skills, even though it has nothing to do with programming. After getting through that, I'm like, okay, I can get through anything now. But that was one of the hardest. Also, there was a computer architecture class that was like pretty difficult to grasp because they had so much information about like bits and your CPU and your RAM and just so much going on in like 2.5, 3 months. So that
Mhm.
was pretty difficult too.
Yeah. Yeah, discrete math was one of those things that I remember learning and forgetting like a quarter later, and
Yeah, don't ask me to write a proof.
yeah, it was tough. I think okay, this is kind of a question that I'm off the top of my head, but Delia, I know you've had like a pretty kind of I would say uniquer journey. Like you worked at a big company for a bit, and then I think startup stuff for a bit. So can you kind of just I might be completely wrong, but can you tell us like how your kind of career journey ended up turning out after college and what you kind of decided to do from there?
Sure. Well, as a brief overview, I was super against office work, so I kind of like I did interviews, but I declined all of the like office jobs and waited for a remote job. So my first job out of university was fully remote. I did that for a year. It was like a small startup type thing. And then I started freelancing, which was kind of like the same type of work I was doing at the startup, but like by myself because more freedom and more money. And then I got my job at Google and I did that for 2 years. And then I went back to,
She cut out, I think.
just hear me?
Yeah, you're good. You cut out for a sec.
Sorry, I have my TikTok time limit set. I have to not spend too much time on TikTok, so I forgot to take that off. Okay. Anyway, worked at Google, and then last year, actually exactly this time last year, I got a really cool opportunity to work for a startup. And I was kind of waiting for my like, most people leave Google after 2 years because you a lot of reasons. And so it was my perfect opportunity to leave. And now I'm working at a startup, but also doing my own things on the side because it's super flexible and I can work from anywhere, which was a big downside to the corporation life.
Mm,
Like they were kind of flexible, but legally you have to have like, for tax purposes, you have to be in one place for a certain amount of time, which I'm not.
wow.
But yeah, that was kind of my career journey. And I think one of the questions I saw, or I at least see on our notes, is like startup versus corporation.
Mhm.
And I think that's one of the big challenges in tech too, because you have so many choices. You have like ML, data science, back end, front end. Like there's so many things you can do. And I'm the kind of person that's so indecisive. So one of the big challenges for me is like picking a role and then picking a company, like which size, because all of them have their benefits and their downsides. Like at a big company, you get a lot more stability and resources, and you can chill a little bit more.
Mhm.
Slash, not do anything sometimes. And at a startup, it's way more exciting. You get to work on things, you get more flexibility, creativity, but at the same time, you're probably overworked and things like that. So, yeah, definitely a challenge as well. And the more information you have, the harder it is to make a decision sometimes.
Yeah. Especially because there are just so many pros and cons to like everything. So, as an indecisive person myself as well, I can fully agree with that. Because you sit down,
Yeah.
you draw your little T chart and compare things, and you're like, oh, I still can't get a decision out. So, I definitely fully agree with that. Okay, there's another question we had in the chat, and Dweez, I want to throw it to you because we've talked about this before, and I know your answers are usually awesome when it comes to AI related stuff. So someone was saying that I'm teaching myself full stack web dev at the moment, but with all the rumors of AI, and I'm guessing he's talking about like AI disrupting engineering, they're getting discouraged. So how can he get encouraged? And also, what are some aspects of AI that you think won't affect this field?
Yeah, I'm rereading the question. I have it right in front of me. It's a pretty long question.
Yeah.
Well, I think first of all, yeah, AI is already here, so we all have to adjust. We have to learn that it's the part of the development process, software development. Your changes come and go all the time, and there's
Mm,
always something new. There's always a shiny new object that everyone is gearing towards. Yeah, with AI now, I don't think it's going to. I've said this many times, but I don't think it will replace developers like that. AI will be used. during the software development process for productivity purposes. So it will make the whole process faster. So we will be developing at a faster rate, I believe. So new technologies will be emerging because of AI. But for now, I do not think it will. I do not see it replacing developers. So if you're not feeling encouraged to go learn software development, this is it. You're not going to be replaced because we are not that far yet with AI. Maybe I'm wrong. They released ChatGPT 10 yesterday, and it's already taking over the jobs of developers. But I definitely think that if you are a developer, you need some AI knowledge because you will have to apply it if you want to keep up with tech. Yeah, with
Yeah.
other developers. I mean, so
Yeah.
yeah, but I do not think it's gonna replace devs.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I think something important to realize too, just if you're in tech in general, is that things are always going to kind of change at a pretty fast rate. And I'm sure everyone here
yeah,
can agree to that because, I mean, I've only been a developer for a handful of years, and I mainly do like mobile development, like building mobile apps and stuff like that. And in like the handful of years that I've been doing it, I've seen like new frameworks come out and like new perspectives on development workflows, and there's just like a lot of new ideas that come out. So it's like both a pro and a con of being in tech is that things move really fast, so you get to like learn new things, and things just get better over time. But obviously the con is that you have to like continually educate yourself and not fall behind basically. Because like throughout the last 2 decades, if you didn't keep learning and teaching yourself new technologies, then you might become like obsolete as a developer. So I think you should focus on that more, is like educating yourself and keeping up with like what's being up to date. So that means like reading books, building side projects, things like that. So yeah, I think someone asked what areas in tech does everyone specialize in. So I think we can kind of just like go down the list. I just said, yeah, I do mobile stuff mainly and like mobile and web development, but mainly front end stuff. Delia, what would you say you kind of either specialize or like
I
love
do back end.
back end? Okay.
Yeah, I mean, most of my career was full stack, but then at Google is all back end. And now at a startup, I'm like wearing all the hats, but mainly
Nice.
back end, if I were to summarize.
Nice. Would you say that's also your favorite or it just happened to come into your lab?
I think it is my favorite.
Yeah.
Well, I like the instant gratification of front end a lot,
Mhm.
but um, but it really depends. I
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't want to pick favorites. I like full stack the most because I'm indecisive and I like a little bit of everything.
You can never go wrong picking full stack. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Dweez, what about you? What would you say either your favorite or what you just have the most experience with?
yeah. I honestly like at this point, it's just content creation and lives on TikTok. I've learned so much from these lives. Like it's crazy. It's like my personal, 1 hour of tech content. I really a lot of things that I
Yeah.
additional knowledge have come from you guys. So yeah, thank you. If anyone, I definitely recommend these lives. If you're learning or not, you want to learn more, just join the lives. We're here every week on Wednesday, 10:30 Pacific time. Free
Awesome. Yeah.
knowledge.
Yeah, yeah, they're definitely great. And also, all our lives are uploaded on like YouTube and stuff. So, for example, we did like the whole AI 1 hour thing. So definitely check that out. Sky, what would you say your either favorite? I know you're still studying, but so far, either your favorite kind of thing that you specialize in, or just what you have worked with the most.
I would say I definitely work the most, like I guess it would be considered back end. In school,
Mhm.
but I do like to play around with front end like in my own time. But I really like embedded systems or working with like code that does something to like hardware. So like I had an engineering course, like an intro to engineering course, and we built this robotic car, and then we coded it to basically make it through a maze on its own. So it was like automated. So you just press start and it like completely went through a maze, picked up a little paper person, and then like took them to the destination. And that was amazing because every time you change the code and hit enter, you can see like literally what it's doing. Like the car is like moving, and sometimes it'll run into the wall and you're like, okay, let me change something. And then you hit enter and it works perfectly. Like that was really fun. So maybe I can work at Tesla. That's probably, that's probably what I want to do then.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know a couple people that work as like in robotics or like automation and stuff like that, and they love it. So definitely, Internet of Things is like a pretty
Fun.
popular thing. So yeah, that's awesome. I think this next question could kind of be a segue from what we were just talking about, and it's how do you stay up to date with like latest technology, either trends or just like what do you kind of do to make sure that you don't kind of fall behind? If there's a new piece of tech, what's the best way to learn it? Delia, why don't we start with you?
Yeah, I think because we are all content creators, like I follow so many content creators and it's
Yeah.
such a great way to stay up to date. But also I'm subscribed to maybe like 50 newsletters. Like tech, I'm
Mm,
obsessed with tech
yeah.
newsletters. And surprisingly, I actually read them. Like some of them are really good, so I read them. Like I love TLDR. TLDR is AI version, and then
Mhm.
I don't even know. I'm on so many AI ones now, but they're all pretty good. So
Yeah.
newsletters are probably my favorite way. I hate, that's a strong word, but I dislike keeping up to date on YouTube because I'll get so distracted and get into such a black hole.
Yeah.
So I don't recommend staying up to date like that. But newsletters are a great way because you can just have your like 5, 10 minutes in the morning
Mhm.
to see what's going on in the world of tech, pick out the things that are relevant and interesting to you, and then, go learn that new thing later if you want without getting into a black hole. So that's what I'd recommend.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I very similar to you in terms of like social media. What people don't realize is that you can really tailor like your feeds to generate you something specific, and you can that can be like an active work thing. You know, like if you really want to get coding content, like you said, go follow a bunch of coding accounts and like make sure to kind of like engage with them, like all those posts and stuff. And all of a sudden, you're gonna see that like most of your feed is either coding content or just something related to tech. So that's really like my primary way as well. Like I used like GPT-3 like last year when it was very tiny and the API was very limited, and that's because I had heard about it from like some Instagram post or something like that, and I wanted to play around with it. And then it blew up, and I was like, oh, like I know what this is. So that was pretty cool. So definitely follow things on social media. Newsletters is good. Also, like if you really want to learn about a specific topic, especially if it's like technical, I would definitely recommend like see what the best book about this particular concept is, and either read a chapter or two or skim it or something. But that usually helps as well. What about you, Dweez? What would you say is a good way to keep up?
Yeah, yeah, newsletters for sure. I'm subscribed to only one newsletter. And yeah, it's pretty nice. Also, I do see like on GitHub, like you have, yeah, developers when new technologies come out, like frameworks and stuff, you can find them on GitHub as well. If you're looking more for specific software, there's product hunts. That's also really popular, like especially for like AI tools. Most of these tools are launched on product hunt.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the three things. So newsletters, product hunts, and GitHub. That's
Yeah.
for me. Like, oh, and like social media, but you guys
Yeah.
already talked about that.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. What about you, Sky? Anything other than what these folks said?
Pretty much, I think you guys summed it up. I do really like TLDR because they're literally like the smallest just clips of what's new. And then I can kind of like decide, like, okay, am I interested in any of that? Because there's so much coming out all the time and it kind of gets distracting. Or it also can feed like my imposter syndrome or make me feel overwhelmed. So I try to just stick with like what I'm learning. And then if something piques my interest or if I can see something's going to be really big, like AI or something, and I'm interested in it, then I'll kind of dive into it more. But yeah, I do like the small clips of TLDR. Even social media sometimes
Yeah.
overwhelms me. And also what you said, Ziad, books are really nice because I feel like nowadays with content and blogs and tutorials, like anyone can kind of make those, and you just don't know if they're actually experts in what they're saying. So I really like books, like like actual like programming book or whatever, because like you're gonna open it and find like the good information.
Yeah, for sure. I think being wary of like the content that you're seeing is also a pretty important thing. Like go read on your own as well, in addition to the social media. I think if you like have a bunch of different sources where you get your information like that, then you'll be able to kind of get the full picture and understand what's going on. I've seen this question a couple times in the chat now, so I think we should definitely answer it. And it's like what stack do you use, or what's like your favorite stack or programming language? I think we can kind of do it that way. As a front end person, I love React. I love React Native and TypeScript, so I'm gonna roll with that as my favorite stack that I like to work with. Let's start from the bottom up this time. Sky, what's your favorite either programming language or stack as a whole?
I don't really use like a full stack. I'm not normally like doing a project from like start to finish, unfortunately. But I really my first language was Java. That's what they taught us at university, and I feel like everyone hates Java, but I do really like it. I always come back to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would say Java.
Java was like my first programming language, so it's always gonna have a special place in my heart. But I had to shift away, unfortunately. Dweez, what about you? What's favorite either programming language or stack?
Yeah, I haven't worked with Stack like that either. My favorite language, someone made a joke about it, that's C Sharp. It's also the first programming language I learned. It was really difficult as a first programming language. So yeah, it took me like 2 months to learn it, just the programming language alone. But yeah, and my favorite framework is .NET. It's just the framework. It's like the React JS of C Sharp, basically.
Yeah, I'm just
Yeah.
glad you didn't say R, to be honest, because you mentioned that earlier in the live. Yeah. What about you, Delia? What's
No, R, no.
either favorite stack or
Um,
favorite programming language?
yeah, my favorite programming language is Python because it has a special place in my heart because it's my first, but
Hmm.
also it can be used for so many things and it's just so small and efficient.
Hmm.
Like I've all technical interviews, I always choose Python just because
Yeah.
like you save so much time, it's so much easier and it's so clean.
Yeah.
And yeah, I I can't imagine liking any other language as much, but there's still many that I want to learn. Like I want to learn Go. I've heard many good things.
Hmm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
maybe that will change.
Yeah, I mean, funny thing with Python is that like at one of my first like internships, I was like purely a JavaScript guy, and I only did like, as I said, like React and React Native kind of projects mostly on front end, and I would like do as little back end as possible to kind of avoid it. But then I enter this internship job, and they're like, all right, you're going to be primarily working back end, and we use Python, and I'm like, in my head, I don't know like Python at all, but like you literally take one look at it, and you instantly know like what's going on because of how like simple it is, and it's using words that you're already familiar with.
Yeah, it's like English.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
great.
So I definitely love it for those reasons as well. It's a pretty good first programming language if anyone here is like wanting to start with programming. Even though I love JavaScript, I would say Python is probably better to learn the initial concepts. Building off of that, someone said, what IDE or editors do you use? I'm a VS Code guy. I think a lot of people here are VS Code, but is there anything else that you guys use? It's not an IDE technically, but it's that's what I roll with. What about you guys?
Yeah, VS
VS
Code.
Code's an IDE.
I think when they people say IDE, it's like you want to have it dedicated to a specific language. Like Eclipse is different than VS Code, I think, like
Yeah,
in some
Eclipse
ways,
comes
right?
like already ready, like you just hit run. But I think VS Code you have to like install packages for
Yeah.
depending on what you want or whatever.
Yeah, I'm actually with you, Delia, but I remember calling it an IDE at some point, and I got like roasted a bunch in comments, and like it's not an IDE, so I'm like, okay, all right, I guess it's a
What?
tag.
Oh,
No, it is an IDE. I'll back you up on that. What? Who's saying that? That's silly.
I think people
Anyway,
consider it similar to like Notepad, where it's just a text editor. Technically, it's not
hell
actually like
no. No, you can't install plugins to Notepad. I'm sorry.
Right.
When did that update happen? I'd be using Notepad then.
All right.
And you can't. No, no,
I do
I
have a
it's an
actually
horror
IDE.
like wrote a
story.
bunch of scripts in it.
Yeah, yeah.
I have a horror story of my first programming professor, or my first programming class at university. My professor pulls up Notepad or text edit and is coding Java in text edit and then tries to run it in her terminal, and it didn't run because there were like a million errors. So we just like never could see what the code was doing in that class. She's just like, well, this is what it's supposed to. She just refused to like use an IDE. I have no clue.
Yeah, I mean,
Oh
I
my
think,
God.
yeah, when people started coding, their IDEs aren't a thing, right? So it's just like all text editors or Vims or whatever. So it makes sense. But all right, Delia, I'm glad I have one backer at least on the VS Code thing because I think it's an
For
IDE.
sure,
I
I'll
think it's
back
an
you on that.
IDE.
But I switched from VS Code last year, I think, or maybe 2 years ago, a
Oh,
long
what do
time
you
ago.
use?
And that's because IntelliJ is way better. Like I was
Mm,
mind blown by how much better it is, but it's paid. I only got it because my boyfriend has a paid subscription, and he's like,
mm.
"Oh, VS Code is shit. Try this," and it's so much better. But yeah, that's the only downside.
I
It's
thought
not free.
IntelliJ is IntelliJ not only Java. I've never actually used it. I thought it was like a Java
Oh no, they have
IDE.
a whole bunch of. No, you
Mm,
can use it with a whole bunch of things.
mm,
Like, let's see which one. I have all of their different ones actually. I usually use IntelliJ IDEA. That's what the one I use
mm,
right now is called, and that supports several languages like Python, JavaScript, Bash, things like that. But then there's like a Python specific one, I think, and a PHP one. Like there's a whole bunch.
mm.
But any language you want to use, there's an IntelliJ product somewhere, like an IntelliJ IDE you can use.
Does it just like look
Yeah.
cooler, or what do you like about it? I've never used it.
No, it's so much more intuitive. So like the GitHub integration's way better than with VS Code. I don't
Mm,
know, like I found it so not user friendly within VS Code. Um, just testing and like breakpoints and everything's way more intuitive, I feel,
mm,
and the plugins are better. So it's
yeah.
just way more professional. Like I guess that's why it's paid because a lot of enterprise customers like they have to be top tier. So yeah, I don't know. It's just better in all the ways. All the
I think
ways.
you'll have a cool icebreaker with every developer that you meet by saying, I work with IntelliJ, VS Code. I only know people that like work in VS Code. I haven't met anybody that does anything other than that these days. So that's pretty cool to hear a different IDE, I guess.
Really? It's quite popular though. It's pretty popular.
Yeah, yeah.
Look it up.
Yeah, I remember like in college, like they would tell us like you can use IntelliJ if you want, and like we'll offer a free subscription or something. But at that point, it was either Eclipse or VS Code if you were cool. So yeah,
Eclipse is awful. I will say that. I hate
yeah,
Eclipse.
I
It's
didn't
just
like it either.
horrible.
Yeah, yeah. Dweez, do you roll with VS Code or do you also have a favorite?
I just uninstalled VS Code the other day. Like I was done with VS. Yeah, I had a bunch of packages
Oh
installed
no,
on it.
everybody's shitting on
I
VS
was
Code.
like, nope. So I uninstalled. I think I'll install it again though. I don't know. I never like got around like working with VS Code properly. So I had a bunch of packages that I installed there, and I never like it made my computer so it took like so much space. So
Mm.
yeah, I'll have to go fix that.
Yeah.
I still have the other. You have like because you have VS Code and I don't the other one also. I think it's
There's just
VS.
Visual
The one with the
Studio.
word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
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 yeah, yeah,
that
Delia,
one
that's what people
also.
argue for. They say that Visual
Yeah.
Studio is the IDE, but VS Code is just like its own little text editor thing, which doesn't make sense to me, but it is. I think that's the
Ah,
reasoning. Yeah,
okay, I will Google that right now.
yeah, yeah.
But
Okay, we have
We need to
but
know.
yeah, yeah. I need to know now. I think like very deep nerds will tell you that it's not an IDE, and then someone who casually codes will
Oh
tell you it's not.
wow. Yeah, you're right. that's tech on a technicality. Yeah, Visual Studio is the IDE, and then Visual Studio Code is a rich text editor like Sublime Text or Atom.
Mm, I
I'm
see.
pretty sure I actually used to use Visual Studio now
Oh, I
that
see.
I'm reading this.
Yeah,
But
I
that
thought
anyway,
makes
you,
sense.
but like, doesn't Python have like its own IDE?
PyCharm, is that
Pi-
it?
Yeah.
Or no, that's
oh,
just like the
PyCharm,
basic
yeah.
one.
Yeah,
Is
Hmm.
that
I think
I mean,
so.
that might not even be an ID. I have no clue.
Yeah, it is PyCharm, the Python IDE for professional developers.
Okay.
Yeah, I've never used
It's
it
the
either.
best
Yeah.
one.
Yeah,
It's
Yeah.
I
the
did.
best
When I
one.
was playing with Python, I loved PyCharm. It made it very
Mm,
easy.
interesting. So
Yeah,
listen,
that's the IntelliJ one. See, that's what I'm saying, guys. IntelliJ
uh,
stuff is good.
no, yeah, you guys inspired me now because I just assumed VS Code was like the standard because everybody else I knew, even like at work and stuff, used VS Code. But now I might check out some of this other stuff. It looks spicy.
It just takes me so
Oh
long to
yeah, and
figure out how
thanks.
to use like an IDE that once I figured out how to use VS Code coming from Eclipse, I was like, this is just my IDE now. I'm just going to use this because it just takes so long to figure out
Yeah,
all the
yeah,
little things.
yeah.
That's true. And just for the record, thank you, Zed. I don't know how to pronounce your name, but he just mentioned IntelliJ is great and it has free tiers. So just to correct that, it's not all paid. Like there's free tiers. So, and PyCharm is one of them. Okay.
I feel like we could do a whole live stream about IDEs now. It looks like we could compare and contrast.
Yeah, I
And,
feel like at
yeah.
this point I sound sponsored. I'm sorry. I'm just, I love it so much. Not sponsored.
Oh, God, yeah. No, I mean, I'll definitely give it a shot. I think since we have a few minutes left, we'll kind of wrap up with this final question, and I think it's a good one since we have people in the live. If you were to give one piece of advice, like looking back now, everybody here has learned how to code and has gotten into tech in one way or another. What's one piece of advice would you give to somebody who's just starting out or just like showing interest in tech? Dweez, why don't we start with you this time?
Yeah, one piece of advice. Yes. Before you get in it, make sure it's clear to you what field you want to work in. Like, don't go learn C++ if you're doing strictly front-end development. Like, make sure it's clear to you what fields you want to go in, and then select like your package of languages that you want to learn and the other skill sets that need to come along with it. Don't like just start with a language. That's not where you start. Make sure it's clear to you where you want to work and which fields in tech you want to work in.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, my piece of advice is pretty similar to his. Like, I would also say, like, talk to somebody who's maybe doing the role that you're thinking about doing, and make sure that it's like something that you'll like really enjoy doing. Because honestly, like, software engineering as a career is like an exhausting one, and if you don't like what you're doing, it's just not gonna be like that fun for you. So I think like listening to day in the life videos, for example, or like talking to someone directly and asking about like the pros and cons, I would say is a pretty good place to start. Delia, what about you? What would you recommend to people?
Oh man, there's so many things. But yes, totally agree with that. Know what field you want. And to on top of that, it's okay if you want to switch fields. Like there's so many things, and it's okay if you want to move in a different path later. Just get started because I feel like a lot of people say, "Oh, I want to break into tech, but I don't know where to start and I don't know what to do." Like just start with one. Like try to pick a field that you like, but you're gonna figure out if you like it once you're doing it. It's hard to know before you're
Mhm.
actually doing it anyway. So, don't be hard on yourself. You can move on later, but just get started and be consistent. Like consistency is the biggest thing. So if you can time block, get yourself in a community of friends that are gonna encourage you, and any way that you can keep yourself consistent or accountable, do that because that's probably the most important thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's very solid. I fully agree with that. And yeah, last but definitely not least, Sky, what would you say to people who are thinking about going into tech?
Okay, what was the original question? Like advice?
Yeah, like what piece of advice would you give to someone who's either thinking about getting started or just getting started, like really early in their kind of journey?
Oh, I would say, I mean, you guys summed it up really well. I would say probably at the very beginning, again, just like don't get discouraged. Just try to think of your journey. Like once you've decided you want to get into tech, whatever you want to do with tech, just kind of think of it like logically, analytically, like step by step. Take those small steps and then build on them. Try not to think. Like emotionally because it's going to get really like stressful and overwhelming, but
Mm,
just know that if you take like those small tiny steps every day and you get a little bit better, you're going to like look back in a year and like see all of your progress. So just don't get discouraged. Everyone started at some point. Like I started a little less than 2 years ago. Like I woke up one day and I was like, okay, I'm gonna do this. And I was like a baby. Like I had no clue what was going on. And now I have like some grasp of what I'm doing at least. And everyone here too, like started at some point. Nobody is like born with all of this information. We all just decide to learn it one day and then, you keep deciding to stick with it. And then, one day you look back and you know more than you did, just comparing to your own self. Don't compare yourself to others.
yeah, yeah. Definitely fully agree with all those pieces of advice. Well, yeah, thank you guys so much for joining. For everybody here, we're here on what every single Wednesday at 10:30 Pacific time zone, and we're most of us, some of us at least, are here every single week for sure. And yeah, we really enjoyed answering a lot of these questions and sharing our own journeys. I think I can speak for everyone here when we say we all really have fun doing these. So thanks you guys for joining. And yeah, well, any questions that are unanswered, by the way, we saved those, so we'll get to them for sure in the next live. So be sure to tune in. But for now, yeah, thanks for joining, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.